Fuck with us, you insane in the mind. You cowards way out of line. Money talk, boy, you wasting my time. You don't wanna put the work in, you just wanna taste of the shine. We'll talk so it's hard.
You made Demi wait a whole hour.
Yo, what up, though? It's the Union. We are here with Ryan O'Leary who wrote the book Bars and the Evolution of Battle Rap in the Internet Age. What's going on, fellas? How you guys doing, man?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me, guys.
What's going on, Ryan? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into battle rap and everything like that? Like, what made you a fan? You've been into it for how long?
Like
interest?
More than 20 years now. It's
okay.
I remember. I mean, I was kind of blossomed into a hip hop fan as I was growing up, I guess you could say. And I mean, I was a long ass time ago. But I think right after I graduated from college, really was kind of when I kind of found the internet and started stumbling into some of these hip hop chat rooms and whatnot. I found couple of old websites called Fresh Finesse and DavyD.com. I think DavyD is still around, but maybe in a different format. But they used to have like these freestyle boards. Like this is even pre-audio because the internet was kind of still just an infant at that point.
Right.
And so, it was kind of getting in these rooms and you kind of drop your little verses or whatever and people will give you feedback, and then that kind of evolved into like text battling tournaments, stuff like that. But through those rooms too, as you kind of meet up with people and connect, like obviously people do now, but you start finding out about things like Scribble and these events that are going on, and obviously that was kind of the one at that point. This is in like the late 90s, so just hearing about that and kind of you just become a fan of it. And even some of the people I was connecting with through like text battle tournaments and stuff like that were going out and battling there and actually like battling live. I think I was pretty much always too chicken shit to go out and battle with Scribble because I was never a great freestyler. I felt like I could hold my own at the text stuff, but
where were these text battles taking place? Because there wasn't like a Reddit back then,
No, this was, like I said, there was a couple of different websites. DavyD.com was one. They had a freestyle board on there. And then there was a guy on there named J.C. Graves who wound up starting his own site, and it was called Hip Hop Infinity. And he had like an online store. He was selling records for people like Mac Lethal and other underground rappers. So like he was connecting with them and would do like record reviews for underground stuff. He had a lot of connections with like the Anacon people like Sage Francis and people like that. But he would have these tournaments and, basically he'd set up a bracket of like, 16 people, and it would just be, okay, you drop your 24 bars or whatever, they drop theirs, and then people would vote in the chat room. And it was all pretty primitive stuff, but, there was people on those boards. I remember, like C-Ray's Walls being in there. Guys like Kashmir and Jugga that wound up battling down at Scribble Jam. They said Mac Lethal was involved with that site. I know when he battled Immaculate at Scribble Jam in 2004, he actually dissed J.C. Graves in one of his rounds to Ilmac because he had gotten jerked over some kind of thing with selling CDs on there. So... But yeah, and then those kind of evolved into, I think Phila Flavor was kind of one of the next rounds of sites, and MCBattles.com came around like after that. And then that's getting into like the early 2000s when you start having more audio and video. And I think it was kind of the early part of, I think MC Battles seem to be where most of the guys that are connected now, like the Lushes, the Organics, those guys were on there, and that's how they kind of all got connected with each other. That, and then a lot of them met in person through the WRCs, obviously, but they had like a little online community before that. So anyway, that's kind of how I got in, and I sort of fell back from it a little bit in the early 2000s, I would say. I was kind of dabbling and making music on my own, not that it was very good or notable, but I kind of fell back a little bit from the internet because footage was hard to find before YouTube too. You had to kind of go, and some of these sites would have like, oh, we got this footage, and it'd be this grainy little square, like the QuickTime things. It would take like 5 minutes to load up a 30-second clip, and it was hard to come around. But then I think like around 05, 06, once YouTube popped up and things started popping up there, I kind of just fell into a rabbit hole at one point, and that was kind of when I started finding like Iron Solomon and some of the street battles that he had been doing and the early jump off stuff. And at kind of around that time, I think was when things were starting to pop off, and the first WRCs and stuff, and those things were going on, and you could start watching those basically in real time. They'd drop them, the second WRCs, they're dropping a video every day, and it's like, oh shit, can't wait for this to come out. I would say 06, 07 is kind of when I got like hooked on what battle rap is now online. But I mean, I've been in either participating / following it to some extent for since like probably 97 or so.
Okay, yeah, that's go ahead, Ridgewell.
Were you around for the Blaze battles like in early 2000?
You say what?
Were you around, like, do you remember like the Blaze battle on like HBO? Because that had a huge impact on me, like coming up.
I was too broke to have cable at the time, so I mean I wasn't watching them in real time or anything. But you'd read about them and stuff, and I would still, I think at that point maybe it was sort of around the tail end of when I actually still paid attention to the source. But you would hear people talk about the Blaze battles and things like that, but I wasn't watching that stuff in real time. And like I said, obviously, if you weren't seeing them on HBO, that footage was hard to come by online, or at least in any kind of quality at that point.
I got my hands on the VHS bootleg version,
Okay.
Back then, so I wasn't watching it on HBO either. So.
Did you happen to catch like the Smack DVDs at the time? And
I was not really aware of like the Smack stuff going. I mean, I think, I don't know. I kind of, I wasn't really, like I said, around that time, the early 2000s, I had maybe kind of fallen back from a little bit. I wasn't really in the chat rooms at that point.
Yeah.
So as that stuff, and I mean, really, a lot of it wasn't internet based. Smack wasn't online at that point. Those videos were only getting online because guys like Eric Foreman were putting them on there.
Right.
But I mean, those guys were just trying to sell DVDs, and I think the majority of their traffic obviously was in New York and whatnot. I wasn't really in the loop at that point. But like I said, once I got on YouTube in like 06, and those guys had put stuff on there, you see the like Mook versus Jay Mills and those battles. I kind of started becoming aware of it at that time, but I was a little behind on that part.
Yeah. So, what made you want to write a book about battle rap?
I mean, I'm a sports writer by trade, so I mean, this is kind of what I do, and I've always wanted to do a book of any kind. And I had a couple of things that I had planned to do books on, and was like in, I guess, preliminary discussions to do them, and they kind of fell through for whatever reason that were sports related. But I just came home from work one night and was going down a hole of battles as I do from time to time. And I was just sitting there one night, just kind of watching, and was like, has anyone ever done a book on this? And kind of looked around and couldn't really find anyone that had. So I was like, well, shit, I might as well do it. And just sort of not really having any previous relationships with anybody, I just started trying to look up who I could get in touch with email-wise or Facebook or whatever, that, just started hitting up people that I knew were kind of prominently involved, and was like, hey, I've got this idea. Would you be down? And started getting a few people responding. And I think once I got the first couple, it kind of just seemed to slowly pick up steam and snowball from there. And here we are, I guess, really almost exactly 5 years later at this point.
Was that the first time that it ever came to you that you can write a book on battle rap, or have you ever?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I had maybe, I'm sure, subconsciously floated the idea through my head at some point, but that was the first time I actually looked to see, like, okay, has this been done? And there was one guy, Greg Reike, he had actually put together something, and you can find the PDFs of the pages on, I think it's on MC Battles or one of the sites that he had actually done. It was a book of like basically the 50 best battle rappers of all time, where he would have like a little bio page for each one, and then had like an illustration of them on the other page. It was more like a arty coffee table book sort of thing, but I don't think he ever published it. He kind of just put the pages online, like, here, check these out. So, I mean, it was kind of a different thing anyway. I would like to see him actually update that and follow through with it. But, I mean, as far as what I was trying to accomplish, like, no, I couldn't find anything. So I said, hell, might as well give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's up. You know, we like, you know, my whole thing, like with a lot of what goes on in battle rap, like people like there's a lot. Have you seen the Body movie recently?
Yeah, I hadn't gotten a chance to see it in the theaters, unfortunately, because Chicago, which is 3 hours away from me, was the closest one, and I just didn't have the time to get up there. But I saw it when it came out last week. I think I watched it 3 times in the first day and a half.
You know,
it's awesome. I mean, Twisted, fantastic with it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. We hear a lot of criticism about it, and people, you know, and I heard, you know, hear some about this book. And my thing is, like, you know, like you said, no one's wrote a book about battle rap. I mean, everybody's got critiques and thinks how something should be done, but, you know, Twist actually wrote a script, and that's his script, and they brought it to fruition. Same thing that you did with this book. And it's like people like to talk, but nobody likes to, you know, put the action behind it. So, you know, I'll salute you for actually doing that, because you're right. Like, you know, like it's an awesome book, you know, and when you grow up, I grew up with all these people, and you read it, and it's just like, you know, it pretty much documents everything that, you know, would get lost in the shuffle if no one took the time out to do what you did. So, you know,
and I mean, I tried to at least cover to some extent every major thing along the way, every era, every major scene, you know, New York, the West Coast, you know, kind of wherever. And obviously some things are going to get covered in more detail than other. Part of that is a product of who I was able to get a hold of and who I wasn't. But I feel like I at least had something on just about every major point of impact.
Right.
So I feel like it's pretty representative. I mean, other people may look at it like they may see it differently, if maybe they aren't featured as prominently as they wanted to be, or what have you. I don't know. But I mean, I feel like with the tools I had, I felt like I did the best I could with it.
That's a fact. Yeah, absolutely.
We were talking about just a minute ago about how much we've read into it, and I'm talking about jumping around the book. Can you tell the audience, because when I first ordered this, I was expecting something more of the lines of a novel, or, you know, I wasn't sure what to expect. So when I got it and saw the layout of it, I was quite surprised and was pleased, because I enjoy this kind of layout, you know, especially kind of book.
Well, I thought it's framed as an oral history, which is, for the people that aren't familiar, is kind of, it's basically being told, like, narrated by each of the individual guys. It's basically just taking the raw footage of people that I interviewed, and I'm kind of just weaving it together to make it a coherent story between, you know, 100 plus people telling it. But I figured it made sense for 2 reasons. One, that first of all, like I said, I didn't really have any real relationships in the battle scene. So if I'm putting this out with my name on it, and it's just, okay, this guy's telling the history of battle rap, everyone's going to be like, well, who the fuck is this? Nobody knew me. But if I tell it through their eyes, the ones that have actually lived it, and, you know, if Disaster's telling you the story, if Thesaurus is telling you a story, if Hollow's telling you a story, if Smack's telling you a story, that's going to be a lot more interesting to people than, hey, this old dude who has just watched a ton of battles, like, what's he done? So I'm a nobody as far as battle rap goes. It's these guys that have done it all, so it made sense to let them tell the story. I just tried to make it make sense.
And how long did this take, this whole project?
Like I said, I mean, the seed of it when I first reached out to people was like December of 2013. So, I mean, from that point to, I had basically had it done mostly by the summer of 2017. I would say 95% of it. And then from that point was just trying to find the right home for it as far as a good fit with a publisher and whatnot, and just being able to do it the way I wanted to do it. So, and I tried to keep it updated through then. Like I had kind of set, as I knew Bodied was coming out around the same time-ish, that I had kind of set that as like the end point. I knew I had to have a timeline that ended somewhere. I was just going to never stop writing this thing. So I kind of set Bodied as like the end point and just tried to keep things current as I could up until the point that it actually published, which I think the last thing I added actually was ARP. And, you know, once he booked the Mook and Verb thing, I felt like that kind of merited a mention. I wanted to try to get any kind of major development that happened in there. But so I guess realistically about 4.5 years to get it from start to finish, but probably the bulk of the work was done, I would say, in a little less than 4.
Okay. You said over 100 battle rappers?
Just short. I forget the exact count, but I think it's just short of 150.
150, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, counting everybody that I had talked to. So yeah, it was a lot. And I mean, honestly, I probably tried to get close to 300 people, but for some of them I just couldn't reach, and other ones just didn't want to
be a part of it. So
I would say out of the people that I really, really, really wanted to get, there's probably only about 4 or 5 that I didn't get. Some of the other ones were, okay, it'd be cool to get them, but I can live without it. Like, you know, it would have been cool to get Eminem, obviously, just for the sake of Scribble and just to have a bigger name in there. But, you know, he wasn't really central to the story, so it's like, okay, I can live without it. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, Cannabis, same thing. Like, it would have been funny just to hear Cannabis's take on the Diz battle, but he or whoever was answering the emails for him wanted like $1,000 to even talk to him. Like, I'm not trying to do a track with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds about right, Cannabis.
Yeah. So, I mean, for whatever reason, certain interviews didn't happen, you know, or just couldn't be reached. But I would say I got almost everybody I wanted to get.
Well, that's what's up. Have you heard? Have you got any feedback from the battlers since the book came out that were in the book?
I feel like, the response online, I think, you know, a few people have kind of bigged it up on their Twitters or Facebooks or whatever, or shared different things like, oh yeah, you should get this, and kind of shouted it out. I know, you know, guys like Awkward's Thesaurus.
I saw it on Ruin Your Day. Avocado shouted out when I first heard about it. So
yeah, so they, Avo has been cool. You know, Dirtbag Dan, I think, is giving away a signed copy on his show on Friday. So it's, I think the overwhelming, at least from what I've heard, if there's people hating on it, I haven't heard that much of it. Maybe you guys have. I don't know. But I mean, I think the most important, anytime you put something out there, there's always going to be people that don't like it, whether it's a record or a movie or a book, whatever. There's always going to be people that are
Right.
But I think it was the important part to me was, okay, the guys that I respect, that I've been fans of for, you know, a decade plus in this thing, and just kind of watching and respecting what they do, I was hopeful that they would see this as, okay, this is a good representation of what we do, and, you know, it's a good look for us, and it's not just some dickhead coming in and trying to become an authority on something that has kind of been our thing. So overall, I feel like the reception from the people that were involved has been pretty good. So
speaking of which, like, to your credit, it's great that you've been around for so long, been in different eras like that, because
I'm old as shit. That's
I'm sure I'm older than you are.
I don't know. Try me.
It shows a lot, man, and it's a real you know, to still be in it, still be interested in it, it speaks volumes. What was like your favorite era? Because there's been so many eras over the years.
There is. I mean, I think there's different stuff to love about all of them. I think the fact that the preparation that goes into it now, that you can spend 2-3 months crafting 3 rounds for somebody, and just the intricacy of what you get from that. It's kind of like, I know people have said, you're kind of pushing the English language to different levels and kind of stretching the bounds of what words can do. So I think that's cool about now. I liked the freestyle era because you had those moments where it's like when you have that perfect rebuttal on the spot, on beat, and it's just the wittiness that it takes to come up with something on the spot and just flip somebody's stuff within seconds. You don't have those moments, I don't think, with written stuff where it's like just this boom, like, oh crap, I can't believe he said that. So I think those moments, what made the freestyle era great. My personal favorite, though, and I think I'm biased because of just around the time it happened, I feel like I just really got engrossed in it on a day-to-day basis, was the WRCs. Because I think it was a combination of both. I think guys were starting to, it was like people weren't saying they were writing yet, but I think more and more they kind of openly were, like without saying it. And you kind of, by the time you got to the finals of the second year, I think people were at least acknowledging it, but you still had that freestyle element. But just the anticipation day to day, like, oh, this battle from LA is coming out, this battle with these guys is coming out. And just as it was going on, that was awesome. But also I think the WRCs basically set the stage for everything that's happening now. Because without that event, which kind of brought all these little localized scenes together in a bigger way than Scribble did, because it was worldwide, that you got Don't Flop came off of this, King of the Dot came off of it, Grind Time came off of it, URL by way of Grind Time basically came off of it. So it's like every major league, really, everything that you have out there now, this whole worldwide thing kind of came from the World Rap Championships directly or indirectly. So I think it was, to me, my favorite time, but also I think it was the most important time. And that's why I made the 2007 WRCs its own chapter in this thing, just because that event really set the stage for everything that's come since.
I think it was a transition too of it becoming a business, because it started to feel like they were rapping more for paychecks. Not to say that in a negative way, but more the time before that, the era before that, was more to see who the better MC was, and it was kind of a transition. And that's where
I mean, it wasn't guys getting a big advance to just show up and mail it in either. You only got paid if you won.
Right.
During that freestyle era, it's like, I remember when I was living in Chicago, this was probably 2001, entering like a battle tournament up there one night and winning like $100. And I was just like, that was the coolest feeling in the world to me. I was just like, holy shit, I just won money for rapping. Like, it just blew my mind that it's like I walked out of somewhere with, like, at that point, to me, $100 was a lot. So it was like, man, I really struck it rich tonight. So
I always found the notoriety of beating the better rapper to be like my reward. Like when I dabbled in it back in the day, like I remember this one time at a place, at a venue, and there was a crew. And I actually, the DJ was my friend, and I asked the DJ, because he was organizing the battle rap event at that time, and I asked him, like, specifically to match me up against that guy, and it was the leader of the group, and I wanted to fucking battle the best one in the group, you know, just because I wanted to battle the best, you know, like test my might. It was cool that. And that was the feeling that you got back in the day too. Like people were battle the best guy and wanted to be on the top ranks.
Yeah, and I mean, it sucks that I kind of have this, I guess, I don't want to say shyness, but not really. I'm not like a big personality kind of person. I'm not really comfortable on a stage. Otherwise, I probably would have done that more. But just being up there in that moment and that rush when the line hits and the crowd's like, oh, like that. I think, you know, that the main character embodied said the same thing. He's like, that crowd reaction is like heroin, and it really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean,
that's what keeps the battle rappers still doing it today. Besides the money aspect of it, but it's that rush.
Mm-hmm. But it's fucking terrifying at the same time.
Oh yeah,
being up there, because if you swing and miss, then you get crickets, and it's like, I want to be anywhere else but here.
It's got to be one of the most nerve-wracking things to do, man. Like, especially, I mean, you're talking about, like, all I've ever done is, you know, I used to rap a little bit, so I used to do shows. So much different than when you're doing same song over and over. And here you're talking about you got one shot, and you got to perform. And if you don't, like, people get, you know, like they say, you know, they're throwing tomatoes at you or whatever. But it's got to be the most nerve-wracking thing ever. Like,
and that's why, I mean, I was always content to just kind of hide and, you know, just hook up a 4-track or a freaking Roland or whatever and just record verses. It's like, okay, I can take the time to write this. I can, if I need to do 20 takes to get this verse right, I can do it. But when you're on that stage, you got one.
That's great.
I don't know either. I'm curious to see, like, I've never done a cappella battle. So I would be curious to see, and I mean, spoiler alert, I may or may not be trying my hand at it sometime in the next few months.
Oh, you're gonna be doing that?
We'll see. It's not set in stone yet, but it's something I'm at least considering doing. But just I'm curious about not being able to hide behind a beat. I mean, the beat is your enemy in one sense, because you've got to keep up mentally, and you've got to be able to stay with it. You can't, like, do all these pauses and slowing it down and choke for 30 seconds or whatever. You'd just be done. But by the same time, it gives you something to kind of, I feel like you can cloak yourself in it in a way, and you're not just like naked out there with a crowd just hearing nothing but you.
Could definitely be a crutch.
So I'm interested to see, if I do wind up doing it, how I do. I feel like I'm more comfortable in my own skin now in my old age than I was maybe back then. But I don't know if that's going to be canceled out by the fact that, shoot, this is different.
Yeah, definitely different. Who's your if you could, do you have a favorite battler? Like, for me, mine is Hollow. But do you have a favorite, or are you just
I think, gun to my head, if I had to pick one guy, I would say probably Immaculate.
Okay, that's a good pick. Yeah,
but I would say he, to me, is the best there ever was. I think I have a pretty clear top 5 of guys I would say are, at least for across eras and all-time list, I would say are probably the top 5 to me. And not in any particular order, but I would say Ilmac, Thesaurus, Hollow, Disaster, and Iron Solomon, I would say, are probably the top 5 to me, as far as just being able to do everything, excelling across every era. And all those guys have, you know, it's hard now because no one wins or loses anything to say, like, oh, these guys are winning. Like, those guys all come from a time where they have tangible wins that were actually judged and prizes were won.
Yeah,
that they all have that. So I think that kind of gives them an edge maybe over guys that have never done a judge battle, at least in my eyes. I mean, the beautiful thing about it is it's subjective, and everybody's going to have their own list of who they think the best are, what their criteria is. But for me, those 5 guys I think are kind of a cut above everybody.
Do you feel battles should be judged right now, or
I think they should be. I would like to see them judged. I just think if it's a competitive thing, I mean, if you're going to sit there and hurl insults at them, I mean, it's supposed to be competitive, right? It's supposed to be, if you want to call it a sport, whatever, it's competitive. But what competitions don't have a winner and loser? I mean, can you imagine if, like, the NBA Finals, if, like, the Warriors and the Celtics get out there and they go play 7 games, and after each game, there's no scoreboard. They just go out and pound it up, and then they go to the locker rooms and do interviews. And, like, well, yeah, Golden State had a nice third quarter, but I think I edged that 3-1.
Right.
That doesn't happen in any other sport. It's even like figure skating and boxing. I mean, there's judgments, and people feel like they get jerked, like, oh, the judges jerked me, but there's still a judgment. There's still a winner and a loser. There's always going to be judgments in a subjective thing that people maybe don't agree with, but there at least is one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would prefer to see battles judged, and I get that not everybody feels that same way anymore. That it's kind of become something different, but I to me, it's a competition. It should be judged.
It's weird because of the competitive nature of the sport, of the culture, but yet we see it now like theater, this performance arts, where you go to see a show like Broadway, and there is no wins losses, you know.
Yeah.
But if you ask anybody, there's a win and a loss. So it's a
yeah,
weird.
but you're not going into a Broadway performance with the two lead actors being like, "I'm gonna fuck you up, I'm gonna body you," and then afterwards they're like, "That was a debatable classic." It's just no. Somebody needs to win. That's how I look at it.
A culture of debatables, where anyone could debate they won or lost, you know, because there's nothing official. I hear it all the time. You go like we you know, we blog on these battles and everything. You know, when they first happen on pay-per-view, then they come out and it seems like, you know, the narrative changed. Everybody's you know, got point of view, like whoever won lost. So, you know, you can. I agree. I think battles should be judged, and you know, I think people say, well, you know, the argument is always the good thing, but you can still. I like arguing the judges' decisions too. So because it's like,
you can still argue. I mean, if there's no judge, I mean, even like, you know, say King of the Dot title matches, like when they're judged, and it's like people will still say, oh, like this guy got jerked or this guy should have won. You can still have those arguments within the framework of somebody actually winning and losing.
Yeah, exactly. Because I had Roan beating Head Ice, and Head Ice got the chain. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be. There's people that think Pat Stay beat Elmac. There's going to be people that think Caustic beat Roan or whatever. That every one of those matches, unless it was a complete body bag, I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always going to be, even if it is a body bag with these unjudged battles. I mean, there's ones that are just very, very one-sided, and there's still always going to be somebody in those YouTube comments like, no way, man, such and such got this. And like, no, they got smoked.
Yeah.
But everyone's always going to have their little cluster of fans that ride with them no matter what. And even if they're terrible on a given day, they're still, oh, no, you got this, man.
That's a fact.
So there's always going to be arguments, no matter how obvious it is.
Yeah, that's the beauty of battle rap, man. So, now the book, man, I just want to get back to real quick. I was really like, even if you're like a really, really hardcore battle rap fan, you pick up this book, you're gonna read a lot of stories in here that I didn't even know, man. There's like so many gems in here, and so, you know, like. And every time I pick it up and read it, I see something else different. So I mean, when I was talking to Joe before you got on here. Did you write this book more for like the hardcore fan, or did you have like you know, like casual fans in mind as well?
I mean, I don't know. In a weird way, I guess I kind of wrote it for me first, but
okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it was just something I always wanted to do, and I kind of just had thought, like, I was talking. I remember I was talking to somebody who, I forget who it was, but as I was having a conversation with one of the people I was interviewing, they're like, you know, what are you looking to do? And I said, my goal was that if like Harvard or some college ever teaches a course on battle rap, I want this to be one of the textbooks. Like, I just wanted to have as complete a history of it as I could. And as far as who it's for, I mean, I think it's kind of for both, honestly. I think that it was intended in one way to be like, okay, if somebody's maybe started watching battles like in the last 3 years or something, and they're just not familiar with how it got to this point, like the evolution of it and just how it's changed and the different periods that went into making it what it was, this is kind of a good starting point. That's why I put the, you know, some of those QR codes in there too. So like if somebody's never seen, you know, Thesaurus versus Justice at Scribble Jam, that like some of these big important things that, okay, we can have this as a frame of reference and go back and watch it and kind of have an idea for what it was at that time. So I think it's a good reference tool maybe for a newer fan, but also, like you said, I mean, I think even people like, I felt like I was fairly knowledgeable about battle rap, at least, you know, there's some areas I felt I knew more about than others, but just overall, I felt like I was a fairly knowledgeable fan. But going through and talking to these guys and hearing all their stories and whatnot, there was so much that I had no idea about. And to be able to put some of that in there, there's some stuff that wound up on the cutting room floor, unfortunately, just because it didn't flow into the story or whatever. But I mean, there's some nuggets in there, and like guys that I've talked to, like Direct and some of the other guys that I know that have been following Battling for as long as I have or close to it, and I would say are way more knowledgeable about battle rap than I am, that they were like, holy shit, I didn't know so much of this stuff. And so that was cool to me. I feel like it's got something for everybody. Like you said, I mean, no matter how knowledgeable you are, I think there's something in there that you're going to be like, oh man, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, there was like 9 trillion things that I picked up, and I was just like, oh man, even stuff that I thought I knew a lot about, it was like this one little nugget, and it was like, oh man, that's how that happened. Or
yeah, it reminds me of things too that I think I knew, but I didn't remember, like the DMX disaster situation. I felt like I knew that, but they were supposed to battle, I guess, but I've forgotten that might have happened. It was instead of, I think, Cassidy at the time, and that
I didn't really. I guess I wasn't really, messing around with, the different chat rooms or whatever. I guess I wasn't so much caught up in the gossipy part of it at certain times, but like I didn't really know about the DMX thing, but apparently I guess that was the thing. But I think just even different battles that have occurred across time, like, hearing about like Chris Webber battling against Proof was like,
right.
there's so many of those that like there's no footage for, or if there is footage that like one guy has it in their attic and they've never seen the light of day, and it's like, man, I would kill to see that battle. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, but yeah, I was like, when I actually tried to get a hold of Chris Webber too. I was like,
did
man, I was like, I got to talk to him about this, but
yeah, that would have been something. All right, so the only criticism I did hear about it, and I want your opinion on it, is the lack of the female battle rap side of it. Do you have anything to say about that?
That was one I heard too, and I can imagine, I can probably guess where you heard it from.
Right.
But I mean, it's okay. I mean, there are multiple females represented in this book. I mean, Sarah Kana's in there.
Right.
Katana, who was involved in some of the early jump off stuff and battled on Fight Club. There's just not. I think it's weird because I think as you go through the major moments of battle rap, not to say that there's no female involvement, but I mean, battle rap is for the most part a sausage fest. It is usually a bunch of dudes in a room yelling insults at each other, and there are women that are doing it and doing it well, but I don't know. I tried to reach out to more people than I got. I wanted to talk to, Lady Luck and Remy about their battle at Fight Club. I mean, there's some classic moments, obviously, that involve female battle rappers, but I think in the grand scheme of things, there really aren't that many. Not to say that there's no contribution at all. And I mean, I get where people are coming from. Like I said, part of it is a product of people I couldn't get a hold of, and part of it is just these major moments. This is who was involved.
Right.
So it was not an intentional slight by any means. It's kind of just the way the story played out and who I was able to reach. But I mean, Sarah had some awesome insights. I mean, she was around some of the real cool old school, like late 90s stuff. I mean, she was talking to me about Mos Def and, some of these other people that she had seen battle or had battled against that. So I don't think it's fair to say that there's not any female representation, that you know, there may not be, like I said before, certain people may feel like certain eras or aspects are underrepresented, and that's fine. But he said it's a product of who I could get a hold of and the pieces I had to work with, but also a product of what the major storylines were. And, you know, it was not an intentional slight to anybody. I mean, there's plenty of talented female battle rappers out there, but I mean, at the end of the day, it still is very much a dick fest, and that's just kind of how the story plays out.
Yeah, I didn't think the criticism was warranted, and especially going through it, there definitely is some representation. And like you said, like,
and I made efforts to get more. It's just it kind of is what it is. But I think I think to some extent that criticism is fueled by the ego of the person making the criticism, maybe. But
yeah, absolutely.
Piggybacking off that, were there some hardships that you had, like some trouble areas throughout the process of writing this book? Like,
I think you mean as far as how hard it was to put together certain sections of it, or
there might have been some difficult areas that gave you trouble, just like.
I think the hardest part was tracking people down. I mean, there were some people it took me, 2-3 years to actually get that I had been trying to message for a while. Other people like, PH, who I had messaged back and forth with a little bit before we could lock down a time to actually talk. He wound up passing away. So I was disappointed that PH wasn't represented. I would have loved to have talked to him just because, that dude had a wealth of knowledge. So to me, the tracking down the people was the hardest part. The writing, like I said, once I had the material, I felt like certain chapters, I think, came together easier than others. I think, Scribble you can do fairly easily chronologically year to year, just as it develops. Grind Time, I had a ton of material for. I could have written a whole book on Grind Time alone, probably.
Yeah.
And, the WRCs, I think same thing. It's kind of, it plays out as it does. But I think other ones that were harder, maybe, I think the post-MTV part where there was so much going on with Fight Club popping up, and I didn't have as much material for that as I would have liked, or, talking to people at the MTV battles. I would have liked to have talked to some other people there. Like, I tried to track down Carson Daly and some other people, anybody that was involved in that stuff. And so I think some of it was harder to come by than others. So I don't know. Yeah, I think most of the chapters kind of came together pretty naturally. I think the last couple where we're getting into like what's like maybe more current, still evolving stuff, and just figuring out how I wanted to attack those was harder. But I think overall, like I said, the tracking down people was harder than actually putting the book together. And certain chapters were harder to figure out, okay, how am I going to arrange this than others? But for the most part, it was, once I had the material, I felt like it was pretty seamless.
Have you written any other books, or is this your first one?
This was the first. Like I said, I had a couple other ones. I had talked to some people way back in the day, sports-related stuff that, okay, we had talked about it, and then for whatever reason, it just didn't wind up coming to fruition. So it was like, I've kind of been waiting for this moment for a while. And sorry for the background noise here. My kids are just getting off the bus. So, but yeah, this was kind of the first one that I was able to actually make happen and come to fruition. So it's kind of been a thing I've always wanted to be able to do. And I thought it would happen within the realm of sports, but this kind of is a sport, really. It's in a lot of ways. So it was something I was passionate about, and I saw an opportunity that something hadn't been done. It was a chance for me to make a contribution to a culture that I certainly wasn't going to make a big contribution to as a battler. So yeah, it was, this was my way to pitch in, I guess.
Do you think this is it, or do you think there's going to be any future work?
I don't know. This was a really time-consuming and draining thing in a lot of ways. It's like, I think I haven't really thought that far ahead, I guess. I mean, if it lends itself to an updated edition at some point or whatever, but I don't know. I'd have to find something else that I was that passionate about that, like, okay, I really want to put some my time and my heart into this project. That, yeah, right now I don't see anything like that out there. But I'm gonna try to sell a few copies of this and let this one simmer for a while before I think about anything else.
Is there audio version of it, or you have anything like that in the works, or just paperback?
I don't, and it's funny that actually one of the guys, one of the dudes that I had interviewed for the book actually suggested doing like a audio version where, you know, we take basically the raw audio of the interview footage that I have.
Oh wow, yeah.
Kind of splice it up. I think that would be hard because it would take a lot of editing. And also, I kind of feel a weird way about that as far as, like, from a journalistic standpoint. Like, I feel like the interviews themselves are kind of, you know, private, I guess, so to speak. I mean, even if it is technically the same material, I feel weird about it. And that also, I mean, there's certain guys that, one, I had to talk to by email, like some of the guys from like Australia or England or whatever. Some of those conversations were by email, and other ones, and some, like with Bender, obviously I can't. Well, I guess I think he wanted to get everybody to read their parts. Basically, was the thing I got, which obviously wouldn't work with people like Bender.
Yeah.
So I think it would just be a very, very impossible. Well, I would say it wouldn't be worth the amount of time I would have to put into it, I guess, to do it. I think it could be cool in a way, but I mean, it took me long enough to go through all these interviews and type stuff out that I don't want to go back through them and edit them and piece it all together. I'll leave that for someone else to do. You know, Avocado can make the big boy TV or audio version.
Yeah. So where can you get where can people get the book at? Like Amazon?
It is on Amazon. It's actually, I mean, they are charging for the full cover price there, and plus, I guess they're not shipping it out of the U.S. So probably the best place to get it would be at battlerapbook.com because one, it's on sale there right now until Christmas, and two, it ships everywhere. I mean, I've shipped copies out to like 12 different countries now.
Nice.
And the international response has actually been kind of crazy to me, that the UK heads and the Australian people, that there's a lot of fans of battle rap outside the US, which has kind of been cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. I
would say probably a good quarter of the books I've sold have been outside of the US.
Nice.
But yeah, battlerapbook.com would be the place to go to get it. You know, like I said, 25% off until Christmas. And, you know, if you get it now, it'll hopefully get there in time.
That's a fact.
Yeah, I would recommend it. I mean, I'm a little biased, but I would highly recommend it as a Christmas gift to battle fans.
I recommend it to any battle rap fan, for real. Like I said, if you're new to it, if you're one of the most hardcore fans, you'll enjoy it. And just you know, I love the layout. I love how you're hearing it from their perspective, all the battlers. It's literally, you break down what's going on, and then all the battlers, they start describing it in their own words, and it just lends to a very good read and makes it very interesting. So yeah, I definitely recommend it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You said the LMAC was probably in your number one, but what's up with the thesaurus picture in the back?
Funnily, I mean, that was a product of my boy Andy Scheiderick, who I used to work with at one of the newspapers I worked at previously. He's a graphic designer. He put together the cover for me, and he wanted to find a picture that was going to work well as, like, he did it all as a stencil, like actually, like the art on the front, like he stenciled those letters and like actually put that on a wall and spray painted it. Okay. And he wanted to do the same thing with the picture. I actually had a picture of Disaster on the back that I wanted to run on the back. It was like a picture I had seen of him against Averb, I think it was, where he's kind of got his arms up in the air and he's screaming, you know, typical Diz.
Yeah.
And I was like, that to me was like the perfect representation, but just because of how it, like the lines and the contrasts and things, he just said it wasn't going to work as a cutout. So he decided that was going to be the best one out of the photos we had access to. So it just wound up being him, which is, I mean, like I said, I mean, Thesaurus is definitely in my top 5, probably top 2 or 3. And, you know, he's definitely one of the most influential guys in this across the board. So, I mean, I think it's still pretty fitting that he's on there. But I just wanted it to be a good picture of somebody that was going to be a major player. I mean, if originally the cover was going to have like probably 10 different dudes on the cover, I just thought it was going to be too busy. He just wanted to have one central piece on the back and that was kind of the one he settled on. So it was kind of luck of the draw in a little bit of way that was somewhat out of my hands. I put the creative stuff on his plate. I had two guys I used to work with. One did the inside pages and one did the cover, and they're better at it than I am. So I just let them do their thing.
Any thoughts on the climate of battle rap today and like where we're going? You know, where this?
I don't know. As far as where it's going, I don't know. I think we've gotten to this point before where it's like, okay, you feel like it's on the brink of breaking through into something really major and becoming like more of a mainstream thing, but for some reason it's never been able to really break through. I think it was, you know, Daylight had said something to the effect of it's going to take like a Dana White type person that figures out how to package it and make it, you know, mass market it. That battle rap is still kind of waiting for that person, because it's kind of the same thing. It's like this raw, violent thing that you can't really put on just any platform. It's got to be like a pay-per-view or a Netflix or HBO type of thing. And at least if you're not going to water it down and make it like a drop the mic type thing. So, I mean, we'll see if that person comes around. I mean, maybe Bodied helps it catch on, or maybe it's something else. I don't know what that event is or that thing that's going to help it break through, but I hope it comes.
I think that's the biggest
as far as just the downside, I think right now is there's just too much out there that, you know, before it was like, I mean, there was like 2 or 3 leagues that, you know, you could watch every battle that came out. Now there's like 800 leagues or something like that. And I can't keep up with everything. I don't have time for that. I barely have time to watch the battles I want to watch, never mind keep up with 5,000 new people that may or may not be any good. So I have other people that maybe have more time to do that than I do. And sort of, if there's new people coming up that it's like, oh, you should check for this. Like I have people that kind of let me know, you know, you should check for this guy. And so I'll kind of find some of the newer guys that way. But, you know, I think there's just too many. I mean, I get that it was probably like that in a different way back in the day. Like every city kind of had their little local freestyle scene or whatever, but it wasn't all on the internet, all competing for everybody's eyeballs. And I think it's just too hard to keep track of everything now, honestly. So I mean, it's cool that everybody wants to be a part of it. It's just hard to follow it all.
We're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with battle rap blowing up, and it's getting much more exposure, especially in this day and age with technology and social media and everything. But at the same time, there's so much censorship and, you know, PC going on that we have shows like Drop the Mic and stuff, which is very PC. It shows battle rap, it gives it exposure, but you know that's not how the real shit is, and it's
and I think that's kind of a hurdle for any niche thing, but especially with battle rap's in a weird place now, just because I mean there's not really a place for, you can't put it on TNT or USA or one of these basic cable networks and have it be the unfiltered thing where you're talking about like shooting people or doing stuff to people's moms or whatever. You just can't do it. So I think it's going to have to be limited to like a Netflix or somebody that's willing to kind of put this unfiltered offensive thing out there, because it is going to offend a lot of people. But it's kind of, I don't know. Yeah, it's just in a weird place because, I mean, it's the only place where you still have, like, just blatant out there, you know, racism, homophobia, things like that are within that context somehow not okay, but accepted, I guess, is like, or expected, maybe not accepted, but expected. Like, okay, this guy's going to say this way out there stuff that there's no way he could get away with anywhere else in the world. So I don't know, like, where do you go with it? I'm not sure. I think it has to be like a premium, like a pay-per-view Netflix type of thing. But same way, but I mean, UFC wound up on Fox and whatnot, and that's, you know, people just relentlessly beating the crap out of each other. I don't see what the difference is, honestly.
You know, the parallels are really interesting with UFC. Like, remember UFC 1 and 2, it was just like it was just, and it's crazy, like the way it is now. And battle rap, I don't know. To me, it's I don't know if there's a room for it in this PC world we're in. I don't, like, if it ever went mainstream, I don't think they can handle it. We saw the backlash, Ariana Grande, the Tay-Rock situation.
I mean, it's always going to be a niche thing. That's the bottom. It's never going to be like even as big as UFC. Certainly not as big as like the NFL or something like that. But I think there is a place for it. We just got to figure out what that place is.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, for me, if this was all it was, you know, I wouldn't mind. You know, because I think every attempt to go commercial, like maybe if the Total Slaughter, we can say that maybe if it was an attempt, didn't really pan out. So maybe this is all it is, and I don't know if that's always a bad thing. You know, like.
Yeah, and I think it was weird because, I mean, like, you had Total Slaughter and Ether kind of in that 2014 range where it's like, okay, these are going to be the big things that blow it up, and those kind of fizzled out, both of them in different ways, and so then everything was kind of, okay, let's scale it back.
Yeah.
And kind of you get back to the pit format and back to these smaller events and stuff, and it's not really – I think those kind of maybe show that it's not necessarily suited for like a huge stage, but
yeah,
it's you know, you just got to find a way to maximize the market you can have within the niche that you occupy, and just try to win over as many people as you can, I guess.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
And overall, I just want to ask you, like, what was your favorite part about writing this book? Like, what do you get the most enjoyment out of it?
I think the most enjoyable part to me was just getting a chance to actually talk to people that I'd been watching and enjoying their stuff for this long of a time, to just be able to kind of pick their brains and, you know, get their thoughts on, you know, their stories on things, but also their opinions on certain things and kind of how this, that, or the other went down, just to kind of get that firsthand instead of being able to, you know, see it on a blog, like somebody talking in an interview with you guys or something. It's like, to get it firsthand, I think it feels more, it just feels like closer to you. I'm sure like you guys get more enjoyment out of interviewing someone yourself than you do hearing someone else's, you know, footage of another one. It's, you get to kind of ask the questions you want and get the material you want to get out of them, and kind of, okay, I've always wanted to know about this. And if you're watching someone else do the interview, you don't get to find out necessarily. But it's like, oh, I've always wanted to know this. I get to ask them. So I think being able to get the viewpoints from those guys directly and kind of I've made, you know, like I said, I was nobody in this battle culture, and I guess in a lot of ways I still am, but you know, to be able to develop friendships with a lot of these people that have been in the scene for a long time, and, you know, kind of get to know them and just sort of feel like I'm actually a part of this thing now in my own way, is that's kind of just been rewarding, because I've always been a fan of it, and I just wanted to make a contribution, and I feel like I actually got to make one that seems to be, for the most part, going over pretty well. So yeah, that to me has been the rewarding part, is just to kind of feel like some small part of this, you know?
Yeah.
Well, you definitely did it. I mean, guys, pick up your copy, battlerapbook.com. It's on sale through Christmas.
Yep.
Even if it's not on sale, it's I believe it's like $20, guys. If you're a fan of battle rap and enthusiast, pick up your copy. Mine has actually, ever since I got it, it came in the mail, has been on my desk, so I get to pick it up. You know, unlike a video where you have to search through it, you know, you can take it with you wherever you go, and you know, it's just a great memento to have. You know, just
I figure it's like half the cost of ordering a pay-per-view for an event, right? So you get 15, 20 years of history for half the price of a pay-per-view, where half the battles are no shows or chokes anyway. So, you know, I think it's worth it, but
definitely,
you know, hopefully other people will feel the same way.
Yeah, and you could literally just pick it up and open to any page and just start reading, and you know it'll capture you, man. There's definitely a lot of good stuff in here. So appreciate you coming on, man. I appreciate you writing this book, man, because like I said, there's not a lot of people who do these kind of things for battle rap and the culture. And regardless of anybody says whatever, man, you did it. You know, you actually did it, and I have all the respect for that. And you did it good, so I appreciate that.
Cool. I appreciate that, guys. Thank you, and thank you for having me on.
thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.